Going to be talking about using search commands and search symbols, and we'll start on page 15 of your manual. And we're going to begin with a set of commands that enable you to search for combinations of words. And I had to step out in an earlier session, so I don't know if anybody has made this point yet. But essentially, everything that you need to fill in the search box at the top of your search window is right up here in the search menu. Okay, so if you need search commands, if you need key numbers, if you need grammatical tags in Greek and so on, if I put my cursor in here, that should avoid those being grayed out. And I can select from a variety of different commands. So I'm going to start with entering the word Moses, and then I'm going to go up to the search menu and go to enter command and use a command that Rick already showed you, the and command. And remember, he said it's shift command. We've reserved shift command for all the search commands. So if you can remember shift command, it's A for and O for or, and N for not, and so on. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. And on the Windows side, it's control instead of command. All right, so I'm going to choose and there. Now I could type in the and command. Notice that it uses angled brackets there. We use that syntax to indicate a search command. And so I don't even need to have and spelled out. I can type in the angled brackets and I can abbreviate. So I could have angle brackets with A, and that would Accordance would recognize that as an and so on. And then I'll do the second word that I want to find. So I want to find Moses and Aaron together in the same verse. And I'll go ahead and hit return, and there we go, Moses and Aaron. Notice that this is not order specific, it's just looking for those two words together. So the first example has Moses before Aaron, the second has Aaron before Moses, and so on. And there are 299 exact hits. Now, the way Accordance counts hits when you're doing commands like this, combinations of words, is that it counts each word that's found separately. So, this would be one hit and then two hits and so on. So, so we have 299 hits in 140 verses. And just like Rick mentioned, the discrepancy is because in some cases, you've got more than one occurrence, more than, in this case, two occurrences per verse. So that might be, you may have a verse that has Moses twice and Aaron once, and so on. Yes?
Is there a way of finding out how many verses?
Yes, over here on the left, it says verse 1 of 140. Okay? All right, so that's Moses and Aaron. Now, the search commands, if we go to the menu here, notice that you've got a divider line here between this top set of commands and the bottom set. The top set are all what we call connecting commands, and that's what's covered on page 15. We'll get to the bottom set in just a little bit. Those are called standalone commands, and you'll understand the differences between the two when I get to those. But all the connecting commands basically point to two different search words or search terms that we're trying to combine in some way. Okay, so in this case, let's double-click the and that will select that entire search command. And now I'm going to do a different connecting command. So let's do or. All right, and notice, we use the angled brackets to kind of point to the two items that are being combined. So if I do Moses or Aaron, what am I going to get? One or the other. Or we may get cases where there are both, right? Let's see, I'm not seeing any. We're getting mostly Moses. But let's see. There we go. There's Aaron and Moses in the same verse. But it was looking for either one, and it found verses that had one or the other as well as both. Let's double-click the search command again, and we'll do a different one. Let's go up here to enter command. Let's do XOR. Anybody know what XOR does? It's an exclusive OR. That will search for Moses or Aaron, but not both together. So OR got us 1,182 hits. XOR narrows it down to 883 hits. So about 300 of those hits were where Moses and Aaron are together. Okay. In 20 years of using accordance, the only time I've ever used the XOR command is when I'm doing training seminars. But, if you need to find one or the other but not both, you can do that. Okay. Let's double click it again, and this time let's practice using the keyboard shortcut. Do Shift Command N, and that'll insert the not command. So what is this going to find? Moses, not Aaron. Right. In other words, find me Moses, but I don't want any verses that have Aaron in them. So this is looking for any verse that has Moses but not Aaron anywhere in the verse. Okay. Now, the old joke is that the verse numbers, when they were added to the Bible, were added by some guy riding on horseback. He's trying to get the numbers in there. So sometimes the verse numbers don't really make a whole lot of sense in where they're placed. So there may be cases where we want to find Moses, not Aaron, in the same sentence, and searching within the same verse won't get us there, because you may have Aaron in a different sentence, but in the same verse. So how do we change the field or the scope of this search? Well, just like Rick was showing, when you go over here to the right of the entry box and you click the plus button, you get the option to set up a range. That's the default that comes up. You can click the plus again, or you can just change the range to scope. I'm just going to do that because I don't need a range at this point. So I'm going to change the range to scope, and then I've got the option to specify scope is verse, chapter, clause, sentence, paragraph, or book. So let's go with sentence right now. So I want Moses, not Aaron, in the same sentence. So instead of 700 hits, when I update this, I get 687 hits. So there were, about 100 cases where Moses was in a verse and Aaron was not in that verse, but when we change it to sentence, we get a different result. Okay? Or we could do, let's say I want to find any book that mentions both Moses and Aaron. I can choose book, and that's a very broad search. And so we get 56 occurrences where, it's because I'm using the not command, that knocks out a lot of possibilities, because it's knocked out any book that has Aaron in it, right? So let's do an and. I'm going to change that to and just to make it make a little more sense. Here we get, if I do any book that has Moses and Aaron anywhere in the same book, I get 1,126 hits. And if I want to see, what books were found by my search, there are a couple of ways to do that. One is to click the pop-up menu down here at the Go-To box. Did Tim or Rick talk about the Go-To box? Okay. So the Go-To box lets me jump quickly to anywhere in my search results. But the nice thing is it filters and only shows you the books that were returned by the search. So this is a quick and dirty way to see, what books were found. All right. Or we could do something like go to our little stats and graphs icon here. And we could do something like the table. And the table will give me a book-by-book breakdown of the results of my search. So we can see which books have results and which do not. In other words, there are no hits in Genesis because neither Moses nor Aaron had come along by that point. But then in Exodus, we get 400 hits, and less in Leviticus, a little more in Numbers, and so on. Okay, so that's similar to where Rick was showing you the hits graph that plots the frequency of occurrence, and you can see, well, where is a word used most frequently across my search range. But this actually gives you the hard numbers per book of the results. All right, so we've done Moses and or not. Let's try something a little more fancy. Let's do Shift Command W. And that'll be Moses within a certain number of words. And you can then notice that it inserts the command with a question mark, and the question mark is highlighted. So all I have to do is hit a number. All right, so I can do Moses within, say, 5 words. And so this is looking for, now notice I've still got my scope set to book, but now with the within command, I've really narrowed the results, because I've said, well, yeah, they can be within the same book, but they've got to be within 5 words of each other. All right, so I may get a case where Moses is the last word of one chapter and Aaron is the 4th word of the next chapter, and it'll return that result. Okay. All right, I'm going to just get rid of my scope here and go back to verses. But so that's Moses within 5 words. Now we've got Moses preceding Aaron in most of these, but we ought to find, here's one where Aaron precedes Moses. Let's say that's not what I want. I want Moses within 5 words and followed by Aaron. So I can click to put my cursor after the within command, and then I'll do Shift Command B, and that gives me followed by. All right. And so instead of 242 hits, that narrows it down to 196 hits, and we should now see that result has been excluded. Okay, so you can combine commands and use more than one command, and so on. All right, everybody comfortable with search commands, connecting commands? All right, let me do one more set of commands here. I'm going to select these 2 commands and replace them with with an and then after Aaron, I'm going to do Shift Command O to add the or command. All right, and then I'm going to type Miriam. So I want Moses and Aaron or Miriam. Now, once you get into adding multiple commands, it can get a little tricky what the logic of the search is. Is this going to find cases where we have Moses and either Aaron or Miriam? Or is it going to find cases where we find Moses and Aaron or Miriam? And what do you all think? You can, but without parentheses, what do you think you're going to get?
Last thing we said, Moses and Aaron, or Miriam.
Okay, yep, that's exactly right. If we do this search, we'll see Moses and Aaron, and then, Miriam's going to be harder to find, but we should see some places where we just get Miriam. And did I pass one? All right, there we go. So Exodus 15:20. So barring any kind of indication of how you want these search terms combined, accordance will go from left to right. And so it'll say, all right, we want Moses and Aaron, that's one search term, or Miriam, that's another search term. Okay, does that make sense? So if I wanted Aaron or Miriam, either one, I could put parentheses around Aaron or Miriam. Just like, those days we all try to forget, when we were taking algebra and you putting parentheses around search terms. So this now finds Moses and either Aaron or Miriam. Okay. All right, so those are connecting commands. Now, let's go ahead and turn to the next page, page 16 in your manual. And I want to talk a little bit about using symbols. We'll get to standalone commands in a minute. But you can also, in addition to using commands to combine search terms, you can use symbols to modify your search terms, to build in a little bit of variation into the words that are found. And Rick talked about the first one, the asterisk, the wildcard. And so he showed LOV asterisk, right? I think he did that one. And we talked about the asterisk is a wildcard that can represent any character, and it can represent any number of characters. Okay, so it would find LOVE, but it would also find LOVES. That asterisk could represent the two letters E and S, or it could find loving kindness, which is, I don't know how many letters that is after the LOV. So let's go ahead and do that search. And what I'm going to do here is, as we're looking at these symbols and seeing what kind of results we get, I'm going to open up the analysis. Remember that little icon that looks like a graph. If you go to the analysis defaults to showing you the words that were found. And in the case of a key numbered text, it also shows you the key numbers. In this case, I'm just interested in getting a list of the English words. So I'm going to modify the display of this analysis by going to the gear menu, and I can just turn off the key numbers. So I'm just going to uncheck Show Key Numbers. And this now gives me a nice little, concise list of the words that were found by my search. So in the ESV, it found love, loved, lovely, loves, and loving. All right. Now, one other symbol that we can use. Let's say that I've done this broad search, but I want to narrow down some of the results. And so, I'm interested in finding all the forms of the word love. So I want loves plural and loves possessive, but I don't want lovers or lovely. Okay, those are different words that I want to exclude from this broad wildcard search. So I can go back over here to my search and add another symbol, and all these symbols, remember, are listed right here. So if you ever go, what's that symbol that you can use to negate something? You can go over here and it's a minus sign, right, or a dash. So I'm going to just type the dash, and then I'll enter the words that I don't want to be found. Now I can even use wildcards in these words that I want to exclude. So I want to exclude both lover and lovers. So I'm going to type lover and then an asterisk. All right. And if I hit return, notice that got rid of lover and lovers. Now, how would I exclude lovely? Well, you wouldn't do an and. In this case, I'm wanting to take things away from the previous search. So I'm going to just add another minus sign. You just kind of string them together. And so I'll do lovely like that. And so I can, filter my list like this. Now, you're not going to do this very often, but you may do it at times when you want to get a list of verses for a particular set of words. And so the wildcard search may get you broad enough, but then you start to see, these are some things I want to take away. Now that I've got my exact list of the terms that I want, I might go over here into my search window, into my search results, do something like select all, and this is a freebie it's not really what I'm supposed to talk about, but if I go up to the edit menu and go to copy as, I can copy as reference. And that will actually go, let's see, how do I get where's something to paste into? Let's try Word here. All right, now I'm completely unfamiliar with Word, so let me just paste and see if that'll work. All right, so I've now pasted in my list of references, and Accordance formatted that list for me. So I could, say these are all the verses that have some form of the word love in the ESV. If I were writing a research paper or doing, or even creating a Sunday school handout, and I wanted to give people a list of verses.
Can I be
let's see, if you wanted returns between each verse, what I would do in that case probably is go to, where's accordance error? What I'd probably do in that case is actually customize the display of the text here. Let's see. If I go to the gear menu, I can go to Set Text Pane Display, and I can actually customize the look of my text. I can take verse references out. I can choose whether I want to display as paragraphs or separate verses on a separate line or whatever. And so I'm going to click the Advanced here. I think it's, well, I think I want to, let's see. Actually, I just need to go into this paragraphs thing and go to References Only. And if I click OK, that's just going to give me a list of references. And in this case, I would select everything and copy. And it's telling me I got too many. So I don't know if it cropped that, but let's see. Replace all the semicolons, yeah. Yeah, it didn't copy because I had too many verses. But anyway, it should copy that list as a series of verses with returns. There's usually a way to do it. If there's something you want done in accordance, there's usually a way to get around whatever the defaults are and do it. All right, so we've done a search using a wildcard, an asterisk wildcard, and we filtered that list using the minus sign. Let's do something like this. Let's see. Let me do L question mark V and then an asterisk. Now, the question mark symbol, let's go up to our enter symbol. It says the question mark is a character wildcard. What that means is very similar to the asterisk, except that where the asterisk can represent any character and any number of characters, any combination of characters, the question mark stands for one character. All right? So it can be anything, but it can only be one. So if I have a question mark here for the second character in my word, what kinds of words am I going to find? And then I've got an asterisk at the end. Live, love, if they have the word laver, it might find that, let's do that search. All right, here we get lavish, lavished, level, Levi, Leviathan, lived, and love, right? Now, let's say I don't want, I don't want Levi and Leviathan and levied and all of that. I can go over here to the question mark, and I can put parentheses after it. And then in the parentheses, I can specify what letters I want to be possible matches for that question mark, or what letters I want to exclude. So if I want to exclude the E, I could do minus E inside the parentheses. And if I do that, now I've got the lavish, the lives, and the loves. Okay? Or I could do it positively and just do, let's see. I could do I and O like this. And that will just narrow it down to the lives and the loves. Okay? So you can use parentheses after a question mark to specify what the question mark can be. You can't do that after an asterisk because an asterisk represents multiple characters. How do you exclude what every one of those characters can be? It usually wouldn't result in what you'd want anyway. So you can use the question mark to represent a certain number of characters, and you can even specify what those characters can be. Now, I'm going to switch to Hebrew here just for a second. Helen's going to cover Hebrew in depth later on. But I'm going to do, say, I don't know, what is that, 7, well, let's do 8. I'm going to do 8 question marks and then an asterisk. What's that going to find? I'm hearing mumbling, but nobody's bold enough to shout it out. Right, any Hebrew word that has 8 characters or more. All right, let's see what we get. All right, so we get some really not very many long words in Hebrew, right? We get a few names, and what kind of names are they? Are they good Jewish names? Good Hebrew names? No, they're foreign names, right? So in Hebrew, because you have small words that are sort of prefixed and suffixed to other words, you actually have very short words in Hebrew. But in the cases where you have long words, those tend to be foreign loan words or foreign names and so on. So you can use the character wildcard to specify the length of a word that you're looking for. All right. All right, now I'm going to switch back to the ESV here. And I'm going to blow your mind a little bit, okay? What I'm going to do here is, let's do 5 question marks. All right, and after the 5th question mark, I'm going to put parentheses, and inside those parentheses, I'm going to do an equal sign and then the number 1. All right. Now, what the equal sign in the parentheses means is that this character, this last question mark, can be anything as long as it's the same as question mark number 1. Okay, so in this case, the last letter of the word can be any letter as long as it matches whatever the first letter of the word is. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here after the 4th question mark, and I'm going to do equals 2. So now the 4th letter has to match the 2nd letter of the word. Now this is going to find a special class of words. There's a big fancy name for it. Anybody know what? Palindromes, right. Hannah is a palindrome, is a popular kids book. Hannah, Hannah, is spelled both the same, both backwards and forwards. That's a palindrome. And so this is going to find all the words that are spelled the same, all the 5 character words that are spelled the same backwards and forwards. And we get Aziza, I'm going to turn the key numbers off, Aziza, Hala, and Level. All right. Now, why in the world would anybody want to search for palindromes in the Bible? Well, you probably wouldn't unless you're putting together some trivia, thing for your youth group or something. But we put this feature in here for a reason, not just to say, hey, we can find palindromes and nobody else can. If we switch back to the Hebrew, what I'm going to do, in Hebrew, most verbs are 3 characters. All right, they have a 3-letter root. And there's a special class of verbs in Hebrew called geminate verbs. These are verbs that have the same letter in the 2nd and the 3rd letter of the root. Okay, so if I wanted to search for geminate verbs in Hebrew, I would do parentheses and then equals 2 and then close parentheses. You kind of have to think backwards when you're entering your parentheses. But that will find any 3-letter word that has the 3rd letter the same as the 2nd letter. And then to make sure that these are verbs, again, I'm kind of getting ahead of into what Tim and Helen are going to show you later this afternoon. But if I go to the search menu and I go to Enter Tag, I can choose Verb, and I just want any verb. I could constrain it further, but I just want any verb. So I'm going to click OK. And now I've specified that this 3-letter word has to be a verb. And so when I do this search, now I've found all the geminate verbs in the Hebrew Bible. All right, and here's my analysis that's giving me a list of all those geminate verbs. I can even choose to sort by count down, and I can get, well, what are the most frequently used geminate verbs in Hebrew? Let me make this a little bigger. Savav is to go around, halal, to praise, and then ra'ah, to do evil, and so on. Those are the most frequently used ones. So I've now done a very sophisticated search using a couple of wildcards and using that equal sign feature. That's why we we did the feature. Now, if you're a Hebrew student, what you do is you go to your professor on Friday afternoon and you say, hey, Prof, if I take the weekend and put together a list of all the geminate verbs in Hebrew, can I get maybe a little extra credit, and then you come back you go home, you do this search, you print this out, and then you come back looking very disheveled, be sure to mess up your hair and, look like you've been working all weekend and say, oh, here you go, I did it, and then you'll get your extra credit, right? So, as long as he's not an accordance user, so. All right, so let's get back to the English here, and let's talk. I think I've covered symbols in some depth. Let me just kind of go through the list and talk about a couple of others, just so you know what these are. The @ symbol joins a tag to a word, and we saw that when let's see if we've got some of those searches that Rick did in the history. No, we've gone too far in the history. When he did things like LOV asterisk, and then he wanted to let's search for something like chesed, okay? And that's key number H2617. So I'm just going to put in the @ symbol, and I'll actually go into my commands and choose the key command. This is kind of the manual way to do it. And then I can put in what was that? 2617. All right, so the @ symbol here says that I want to find any occurrence of LOV, a word beginning with love, translating this Hebrew word chesed, okay? And so that is finding those 198 occurrences. Now, how does that differ from if I were to do the AND command here? If I were to do LOV asterisk and the key number representing chesed, what am I going to get? Okay, any occurrence of love, no matter whether it's chesed or something else, and any occurrence of any word, whether it's love or something else, that's translating chesed. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that search. Now we get 216 hits, and you can see from the results here, some of them are ahav and ahava, and most of them are chesed, and we've got a little bug in our transliteration here, and it should be an S, not a C. But so the AND command looks for two items within the same verse, but not necessarily the same word, right? The @ symbol says, no, I want one word that meets both these criteria, okay? So I just want you to understand the difference between those two. And then there's the, let's see, other symbols that we haven't talked about are the equal sign. I've shown you the equal sign in a character wildcard, but the equal sign also comes in handy in Greek and Hebrew searching to search for an exact form. And Tim and Helen will explain that later. And then also in Greek, you can use the plus sign to search for a root form, any word that is derived from a certain root. So if you wanted to find the verb form of ahav and the noun form ahava, you could search by root, and it would find any word that's derived from the same root. And then the last symbol I want to talk about is find next character. Now, that's the period, and so if I put the period in there, any character that I enter now, after that period, it will find any word or any occurrence of that character. So if I put an A here, it's going to find any word with an A in it. All right? And so here are all the words that have an A. And it doesn't matter where in the word it has an A, it's just looking for that character, any word that has an A. Okay? So this can be really handy in Hebrew if you're looking for some, vowel and you want to search for any word that has a kametz or something like that, you can enter that using the period. Or in English, let's say I want to find any place that there's a question in the Bible. I can do period question mark. And then it'll find all the questions. What's the first question that's asked in the Bible? Well, it's the serpent saying, did God really say you can't eat from any of the trees, right? So there, if you want to do a trivia thing for your youth group, what's the first question in the Bible? What's the last question in the Bible? Or if I wanted to search for quotations, direct speech, I could do quotation marks. And actually, I did straight quotes, and I need to do a curly double open quote. Right, and so it'll find what's the first quotation in the Bible. Well, it's God saying, let there be light, and so on. So that's the usefulness of the plus sign. The period symbol. All right, I have 5 minutes to cover standalone commands, and I don't know that I'm going to be able to get it done in that time. But we've talked about connecting commands, this first set of commands. And we've talked about symbols that let you sort of adjust what kinds of words you find. The standalone commands are special commands that enable you, that sort of act as freestanding commands that modify your search in some way. So the first one, the easiest to kind of grasp, is the link command. And actually, what I'm going to do, let's do a search for something like Adam, all right? And I've searched the ESV for Adam, and I've found 21 exact hits, and I want to compare maybe another translation, all right? Has Tim or Rick talked about adding a parallel pane that will show you another text? So, I could put, say, let's see, let's do something like the NIV. All right, so I've got the NIV in parallel with the ESV. But I've got the hits highlighted in the ESV. Why don't I have Adam highlighted in the NIV? Right, this is the text I'm actually searching, the ESV. The NIV is just displayed in a pane so that I can compare the results I got from the ESV. If I switch and search the NIV, I may get a completely different set of verses, right? Because they may translate Adam some places that ESV translates it man, and so on. So if I wanted to search the NIV, what I'm going to do is I'll just duplicate this tab here. I'm just doing Command D. I think it's in the File menu. And I can change my search text to the NIV, if I can find it again. And I can do that search, all right? So now I can compare, okay, there are 22 hits in the NIV and 20 verses. In the ESV, it's 19 verses and 21 hits. So the NIV is translating Adam someplace that the ESV does not. And of course, it's possible the ESV translates Adam someplace the NIV doesn't, and vice versa. But now let's say that I want to compare Eve. All right, well, I could type Eve here and do that search, but then I've got to go back over here and type Eve again. That's kind of a pain. Yeah? Let me answer that question in about 5 minutes, because it's another special standalone command. But first, let me show you the link command. Now, what the link command does, if I insert that, this will find it basically if it's obvious which other window you want to link to, it'll just go ahead and insert the right link. So notice it automatically said link ESVS because that's the only other linkable tab that I had open. If I have more than one linkable tab, then it'll give me a list and let me choose which one I want to link to. But what the link command does is it says, don't look for my search argument here, look for it over there in that other window. Okay? And so now if I hit return, it's going to search for Eve. And then if I go back to ESV, so what do we get? 4 verses 4. If I then do another search, Moses, notice it automatically updated the tab that has the link command to search for Moses. All right. So if you ever want to, let's say you want to search the Greek New Testament and the Septuagint at the same time for the same word. Well, you can set up 2 tabs with each one and link one to the other, and you only have to type your new search once rather than twice. Okay. Or 10 times if you wanted to compare Greek New Testament, Septuagint, Apostolic Fathers, and you can get as fancy as you want to get.
They have to be in 2 separate tabs as opposed to 2 separate panes?
Yes, because the pane is just for display purposes. You're not actually searching that parallel text. Okay. All right. So let's go back to that search for Adam, and now I'll answer your question about, well, how do we find out where, let's see, the NIV has 21 and the ESV has 20, wait a minute. Didn't we find 22 before? Well, but if I'm searching for Adam, right, I got 22. But if I do the link command, that should be searching for Adam. Now that's interesting. That's got to be a bug. But anyway, I'm not sure what's going on there. I will track that down. But for right now, we will forget the link command and we'll just type in Adam. So that gave me 22 hits. I suspect what it's probably doing is it's because I have a flex search set up here and this is an exact search. I imagine that's what's going on. So let's try the flex search here. Here we get 21 hits. But if I do the link command here, all right, perhaps the link command's not working properly with the flex search, but anyway. So I'll do that search for Adam. All right, I have 2 to 3 minutes. So here we've got Adam, 21 hits, Adam, 22 hits. I want to find where's that hit that's in the ESV or in the NIV that's not in the ESV. And what I'm going to do is open yet another tab. I'll just duplicate the NIV tab. And I'm going to use a different command. This is the contents command. And what the contents command does, and by the way, these are all spelled out on page 18. Okay? So this will explain briefly what each of these commands does. What the contents command does is it takes the list of verses from another search, from another tab, and uses that as a criterion in your search. All right, so I'm going to do the NIV here because I want to find the places where I want to find the verses that are in this NIV tab that are not in this ESV tab. And so here I'm going to do contents NIV, not Shift Command N. So I'm using a connecting command. And then I'll use Shift Command C to add the contents again. And I'll do the ESV. So this is going to look for, find me the verses that are in this tab, in the NIV, but not in the ESV. And it gets me Genesis 3:20. So Adam named his wife Eve because she would, and Adam is in, let's see, so, there, I don't have the ESV displayed in parallel. There we go. So Adam named his wife Eve. The man called his wife's name Eve. So the ESV uses man there where the NIV uses Adam. And that's an interesting question why they did that at that point. All right. So that's how you would isolate that using the contents command. Another very powerful command is the hits command. And let's do Let's do something like this. I'm going to get rid of this tab. And I'm going to go back to that LOV asterisk. All right. So I'm just doing a search, a wildcard search that gets me a list of verses. Okay. And then I'm going to go over here to the NIV window, and I'll say, I'll enter the hits command and say use the hits from the ESV window. What the hits command does is it says take the list of verses, take the list of words that result from this search. So ESV, I'm going to turn the key numbers off here. All right, so these words, love, loved, lovely, lover, lovers, loves, etc. says take that list of words and search for those words over here in the NIV. And we should get a different result, 796 versus 774. But if we open the analysis, we should see that same list of words, right? So there may be, the NIV may have other words that begin LOV with an asterisk. But using the hits command, I said, no, take the list of words that we found from our search in the ESV and use it over here. Now, these are very simplistic examples of the contents in the hits command. But these are very sophisticated commands that enable you to do some really challenging things. If you're doing some really complex Greek search, and we had, a guy come in yesterday into the booth at ETS, and this very sophisticated Septuagint search, and we were using these kinds of commands to accomplish what he, hadn't been able to figure out how to do. And so, if you can get your mind around these commands, they're very powerful. But there are other simpler standalone commands like the fuzzy command, which is explained in your manual. I won't explain it now because I'm out of time. And the range command, which lets you sort of create a range on the fly. Those are detailed in the manual. All right.